Welcome back to another 2024 presidential prediction. This one is going to be a little more satirical, but also inclined towards the Pride Month phenomena. Of course, it's the first day of that month. And just like anybody else on the first day of the month, they're probably seething, whether it be over the rainbows or rent that's due. The truth is that we do have some important things to talk about in this election. It's going to be a little different than what people are used to. In fact, we're going to switch some things around according to my logic, but also pertaining to the gimmick I'm running today. So to diversify the content, much like the country is becoming over time, we must change the amount of different, we're just going to play around a little bit. So first and foremost, we're going to change the candidates that we're running in this election. So here I can present to you the candidates we're running today. It's going to be Donald Trump, who for VP, again, that's an open position, of course. We've got on the ticket Abe Hamadeh. Now, Abe Hamadeh in particular, is a guy who is of Middle Eastern descent, who is like this, I wouldn't say yuppie, but that age bracket, of course, like guys in their late 30s, early 40s, bachelor, by the way. So interesting to note. Now, he is running currently for the 8th Congressional District, if I recall, in Arizona, so pretty close near me, in a contested hot primary against Blake Masters, who ran for Senate last time in 22 and lost. Now, granted, again, Hamadeh did lose in 2022 for the Attorney General position. Let's go ahead and just revise that, okay? So when we review the facts, we'll see that Abraham lost ever so slightly. So as you guys can see, obviously, you'll notice that he is only down about a couple hundred votes at the last recount against Chris Mays, who I think is a lesbian too. And so you can see how it all plays into Pride Month. It's a great selection by me. So I think this could be possible for a couple of different reasons. We could see that Blake Masters is actually being propped up in a large way by his ally in Peter Thiel, who is a gay guy, who is a billionaire, who is having a ton of money in and around the Trump campaign, presumably also Blake. That's the safe assumption. And so maybe Trump can say, well, you know what, Abe, I'm going to offer you a get out of jail free card, because if he's likely to lose against the congressional opponent here in Blake Masters, and he's likely to be out of politics in a major way, which is to say, of course, that, hey, why don't you become my VP on the first day of June? It just fits. And I will instead, have Blake win that, obviously uncontested almost. And when you look at that, it looks pretty. It looks colorful even. Now let's move on. Just to provide more facts as to why the scheme fit actually checks out, if you look at it one way, you'll notice right off the bat that he has Make America Great Again right in the tagline. He even brags, in fact, that he was endorsed by President Trump and endorsed by Carrie Lake. Now, again, what is Carrie Lake, but also another MAGA affiliated person? Okay, so you see how this all makes sense. Now, to my next Pride Month related substitution, we have Pete Buttigieg being slotted in with Biden as the running mate instead of Kamala Harris. People might ask why that is the case, and I'm going to provide to you exactly why. First and foremost, we know that both candidates are dealing with age-related issues, whether Trump in his late 70s or in this case Biden with dementia plus being in his 80s. It becomes obvious that both guys would likely want a younger person to be their successor, perhaps. And when it comes to that, down the line in 2028, we need somebody younger. Now, Kamala Harris would be like 64 at that point, and that's not really a big deal. But the problem is that Kamala has a liability that other people don't. So vice presidents typically are about in line with popularity as the president because they're running on the same ticket. It's like the same difference. But in this particular case, you can notice right off the bat that the popularity for Kamala Harris is turbulent at best. You notice how much people strongly dislike her. In fact, 54% of people already don't like her, okay? And 7% of people apparently, according to Statista or whatever this website is, don't even know anything about her. And even if they did know, they're probably anti, to be honest, because just look at the majority opinion here. That being said, it's pretty clear that she's even less popular than Joe Biden. Now, if we recall, we know that Kamala Harris was clearly losing by a lot in the 2020 primary due to Tulsi Gabbard, but also her lack of charisma becoming a easy thing to depict over time. On a chronological basis, we see that she went from like a 0% candidate to maybe 1%. So it's not looking like she's a good politician writ large. And so when it comes to 2028, if Biden were to win with Kamala, it's likely that she'd probably lose by a lot. So that being said, it can be clear, and in fact, it's been written in depth about how maybe Buttigieg would be the person to slot in. And that's why this makes sense electorally from the bases, of course, that it is Pride Month. It's just all timely. Also consider the fact that Joe Biden is hemorrhaging votes among Black people, Hispanics, and Kamala is not doing enough to basically resurrect that, with Biden. It's not like, oh, she's the cool Black vice president. She's going to go do rallies in the projects. It's not going to happen. Plus, there's a huge liability of being shot there. Nobody with an IQ of above 80 would even go there willingly. But there's some intelligent people that may say that, in fact, maybe this hemorrhaging of the black and the Hispanic vote can be compensated for by increasing the white college educated vote. That's something that got Biden over the hill, both mentally. He aged out of the presidential contention, in my opinion, in 2020, but he ultimately got over that last obstacle to become the president, whether you think that was, but we all know what happened there. But we do have obvious reality that points that Biden is the president, that he did win 2020, and that we do need to consider that these college-educated whites were the primary concerning base, okay? Yes, black turnout was crazy in Pennsylvania, in particular in Detroit and Wisconsin, those urban places in Wisconsin, Georgia, Atlanta, but we also have a huge hemorrhaging of the white base that Trump and nominally more standard Republicans were really known for using as their bread and butter to win elections in the Sun Belt, for example. And so, while, yeah, of course, black people helped Biden out a lot, black people always voted Democrat. But in an election year where Obama got over 97% of the black woman vote, he still lost Arizona to John McCain, not just because he's from Arizona, John, but because McCain was also popular among suburbanites and these classical Republicans, okay? And that sort of vote has shifted blue over time, whether that be on the basis of abortion or whether or not they think that the Capitol riot was a really bad thing, which a lot of them do. That's the sort of thing that can harken back into a Biden voter. And so it's really just looking at the math and saying, well, you know what? We're losing the colored folk, but in the time of a rainbow, okay, this month, let's get the whites back. And they're more tolerant of gays anyway. And so I think it really fits. If we look at the credentials of Pete Buttigieg, you can see why he might appeal to the Democratic base. That Democratic base, I'm thinking about a 45-year-old, semi-functioning, working alcoholic woman who had an abortion in the 90s, who probably would have voted for Romney, but is now more predisposed to vote for Democrats at the state and federal level, okay? We're talking about that sort of Maricopa County voter. I think Pete Buttigieg would help Biden more so in this gimmick video in a satirical way, but also in a logical way, than would Kamala Harris. Looking at the credentials, like I was saying, Peter Paul Montgomery Buttigieg was a former naval officer, which women love, by the way, although he doesn't look like the type that they'd be attracted to be honest. Plus, most guys in the Navy are short. Most women don't account for this. He is 5'8" after all, which is not his main defect, of course. A lot of great men are that height. I will say this. He did go to Pembroke College, which nobody knows what that is. Then he went to Harvard College before that in Harvard University. Okay, so he has good credentials. Again, white people eat that sort of thing up. Credentials. And so that is a penultimate important thing to note, because the guy is a good speaker. He's kind of like if you fused Adderall with Ambien and you had a competent speaker, nothing spectacular, of course, but Mike Pence wasn't, and he helped Trump in 2016 become victorious. And so it really becomes that sort of thing where, ironically enough, the electric fence Pence, who is known for being anti-gay in a conventional sense, penultimately helped Donald Trump with the conservative wing of the Republican Party, more particular the evangelical base based in the South and in places like Indiana, where Pete Buttigieg was mayor at the time of Mike Pence being governor. The parallels are uncanny to become less than uncertain, and I'm becoming redundant, okay? But let's look at some deciding factors. So if you look here, we do have a map that's influenceable by a myriad of different angles. While all of these states might be a couple percentage points from each other, at the end of the day, I view a lot of these to be more likely to go one way than the other. And let's state our purpose here. So we've got Ohio going red. We have places like Colorado going blue, New Mexico going blue, Minnesota going blue. We have Virginia going blue. And now it's a very even election. Now, Pete Buttigieg, I think, in a way, is a guarantor of winning a place like New Hampshire. Reason being is that New Hampshire is, New Hampshire is exactly the sort of demographic that we're looking at for Joe Biden's approval to go up. A place where there's a lot of 2016 Trump voters that went back to Biden in 2020, okay? So, yeah, it's these wine moms. This is the game we're playing, okay? Women love gay men. Guess what? That's exactly the niche we want. That's the Democratic strategy right there, okay? Now, when we look at it one way, we do have a couple of more states where maybe Buttigieg would hurt. Now, before we address that, let's get into the point of Hamadeh. Now, Hamadeh is a guy who has been attacked for his credentialism in the past, but I'm here to say that Buttigieg and Hamadeh are like opposites, but similar in different ways, like a horseshoe, okay? So, when you look at it one way, Hamadeh is a guy who is young, trying to climb the ladder really quickly, is called out for not having enough experience by different people, including Chris Mays, who's the attorney general right now. She's prosecuting very, very harshly, a lot of Republicans. And so it's a little bit too bad that there's going to be people rotting in cells, probably becoming patty cake besties with Tyrone in the Fed pen, just because of a couple hundred votes going one way over the other. And so it's a tragic thing for Hamadeh, but now he has a chance to be vice president in this prediction. And I'm here to say that I think his appeal is about the exact opposite and the same of Buttigieg. In fact, you would say it's a foil in a mathematics sense, because these things kind of factor in together. And what are these things? Okay, so you have one guy who is way younger than the guy on top of the ticket, and that's great. Now they're the bottoms in this age related thing. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but when you look at it one way, Abe is totally here and to be poised to be the upcoming ladder climber. Again, presumptive nominee in 2028. Well, what does that mean for you guys? Well, it means that he'll be called out and chastised over not having enough backing for his calling that is politics. In fact, he's going to run on the fact that he's a prosecutor. So if I'm ever pushed on whatever I've said, I'm going to say I plead the fifth, because the guy will nail you unless he doesn't have a lot of trial experience, which he's been hit on, and we're going to actually consult these facts. So in his application for the county attorney position, I think, Hamadeh said that he had prosecuted 10 misdemeanor bench trials and 2 misdemeanor jury trials for DUIs. He worked as a legal intern for the Tucson Tucson City Prosecutor's Office in 2015. So he has been in the lawyer sphere for like 10-ish years or so, but you can see how there's a lot of criticism with respect to a lack of experience. Abe would probably retort in a debate with Pete Buttigieg that number one, so am I, you are too. And beyond that, of course, he served in the military sometime in his 20s, and so that's notable. That said, of course, Pete Buttigieg did the same thing, I think, in the Naval Reserves. And of course, that was a what do you call it? Like a paper pusher job or something, an office job, probably. Pete Buttigieg, obviously another ladder climber, sociopath. Obviously, a lot of people will see through that facade, but middle-aged women tend not to. And so that's really the end game right there. Now, when he comes on running for a prosecutor credential, think about it. He's like, because think about it. We're talking about a crime issue, robberies, thefts, people faking petitions to get people on the ballot, forging stuff, very disgusting things in my opinion. But what you'll notice is that he only tried 27 criminal cases as prosecutor, but even more notable than that, because I think that's a pretty low number, he also if you look at the record, none of these cases actually went to trial. So it's an awful thing to watch in a myriad of different perspectives, because it shows a lack of experience, which I think he could be hammered on. But I think it applies to both vice presidential candidates in this case. So we're going to go ahead and just ram through this prediction right here. Alrighty, folks. So for starters, I think North Carolina is a state that we can see going red for a couple different reasons. Again, I think the black vote will even get more metastasized as we see that there's some young black men in their 30s and 20s that are becoming more Republican, on the back of Joe Biden sucking, having no charisma, but more so also that he has been cucked on, gay issues. And again, it's topical during Pride Month, but the guy is typically just very behind the wheel when it comes to all the worst externalities of the leftist paradigm. And what that means is that their agenda entails a bunch of like trans cross-dressing or, teaching kids in drag, stuff like this. And I think a lot of black people, more so than whites, because whites are totally like, oh my God, I believe in freedom. You can talk to my kids. But when it comes to a lot of these urban people, they are really on the money. And I think they're going to see Buttigieg. They're like, man, you play with your butt, and it's like, they're going to vote for Trump Hamadeh. Now, will they look into Hamadeh? I mean, he doesn't have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, so I think him being a bachelor will cover him on that flank. But anyway, we do have Nebraska 2nd District, and this is going to be a little crazy, because this proves my point more. Nebraska 2nd District is a titular Romney sort of district. Romney as in like white guy, 60-year-old, Mormon that kind of LARPs as evangelical, standard white guy. You see like a madman sort of character, what's the guy's name? Ken Ham or whatever. Okay, this was what I was talking about, okay? John Hamm, that sort of phenotype, okay? That's the Romney archetype right there. The Paul Ryan kind of like, we're going to make tax cuts and that's about it. That's the sort of thing that really flies in places like New Hampshire, in particular, again, in places like Nebraska 2nd District, a very suburban part of, I believe, Omaha in Nebraska. So that's very notable. Moving forward, we do have some things that are countervailing. First and foremost, we see that a place like Nevada is typically not going to go for a guy like Buttigieg. I know my people. No, I'm just kidding, but it's true. Nothing that Buttigieg does really appeals to the demography of Nevada, for the reason that I think Nevada is certainly it just doesn't have much of a college educated population. It's a lot of workers in retail in Vegas, working in casinos. They're janitors. They sweep things up. They do not have these like high IQ Lockean ideals like a lot of these white blowhards, because they will vote Biden despite it not making any sense. Yet the smartest people tend to vote Democrat sometimes. But we do have Arizona next. This is a place where I think that Buttigieg would shine. In fact, I think a lot of people, like I said, you imagine 48-year-old divorced alcoholic wine mom. Okay, that's gonna be a swing vote towards the Democrats. And like I said, Kamala is less popular than Biden. I think Buttigieg will be at least a little more popular, if only because the guy doesn't have dementia and holds the same belief. So I think it wouldn't go blue, because obviously I think it's red +5 at this point, but it would be like a point closer in my opinion. Either way, we do have some more states to consult, and these are going to be more difficult, honestly. So Pennsylvania went blue in 2020 on the back of a lot of turnout in the black areas. I don't think that the suburban trend is really a big enough difference to compensate for the minority shift. And so again, Buttigieg might make it closer than Harris, because Harris sucks. Like, objectively, is just bad. And the only reason why she's still on the ticket, I think, is because to take her off would just be more awkward. And so it's kind of like, it's like if you're hanging out with like 4 people and one of them sucks, like if you kick the one guy out, then it just makes it all awkward. And so you got to tough it out. Anyway, I think Buttigieg would totally help in Pennsylvania a little bit, maybe 0.5%, whereas in Arizona, it's more like a 1. And in Nebraska, 2nd district, it's more of a guarantee, but you get my logic. Similar thing in Michigan. Again, Michigan has, I think, more suburbs to be exploited by the Buttigieg effect, the Buttigieg bump in the back, so to speak. That being said, of course, I think that there are also these Detroit types, the Gaza types, again, the people, the refugees that are obviously in the plantation for the Democrats, at least they have been for 20 years, I think are going to turn out in less numbers, and Buttigieg does not help that. In fact, you think these Arabs are going to vote for a gay vice president? I would say they probably would not as much. And so God forbid Mohammed learns about who's under Biden, literally. Okay, so we're going to have this as a red state. Now, Wisconsin, on the other hand, I think is a little more amenable to Democrats. There's more college towns. There's just, it's a wider place than either of these two states from what my recollection is. And so similar to Minnesota, I think they're going to go into the blue. Like, I mean, this is like its own island when you think about it, but in an odd turn of events, we see the 2016 map altered again. So Trump still wins 302 to 236, but the map is substantively different. I think chief among the differences are going to be the solidification of the 2nd district. I think Wisconsin being different enough and demographically particular enough for Wisconsin to go blue. And then we have New Hampshire being solidified. Nevada and Arizona are somewhat impervious to the effects of a VP change, if only because they're so Republican at this point. So that's the only reason why. Alrighty, folks. So that was the prediction video. I thought this was a good gimmick video insofar as like it's a rare idea. I don't think anybody in the sector would really come up with this. And I think it's kind of interesting because you saw how I came up with the concept on the toilet. And it just became this flourishing thing of autism. It's like, hey, I actually rationalize this being a possibility. Do I think it's going to happen? No, of course not. But you can see how it plays out logically. And it doesn't really change anything, of course, who the VPs are for either guy. But you can see how it micro changes. It's like the butterfly effect movie anyway. And so in the spirit of this filming, of course, I got the only V-neck Under Armour shirt I have. And then I got this pink shirt that does not really go well with the camera, obviously, and the lighting, but this is about as gay as it could get. Maybe I could go clean shaven, but that's a big commitment. It would take me weeks to grow this back, and so maybe not, but comment down below what you thought, and also like the video if you did, and if you didn't, well then tell me, because I'll fight you. Psych. Adios.